Wilson Jermaine Heredia, Robbie Soto. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
It's so good to have you guys on here. Wilson, I know this has been, so it's been 5 years since we worked together a little bit on Rent, and it's 4 years since we last had this kind of conversation before, when you were in West Side Story just about a month and a half before all hell broke loose and the world shut down. Yeah. So what have you been up to these last 4 years since we last talked?
Let's see. Well, I am the proud father of a 1-year-old.
Congratulations.
I did a couple of shows. I was in How to Dance in Ohio, most recently in Syracuse, prior to them doing it on Broadway. I did Next to Normal as well. At Westport, and just kind of trudging along. But being a father is a 24/7 kind of job, so that's mostly what I've been doing. And now I'm doing American Idiot here at the Maryland Theater with the Authentic Community Theater.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, look, you at this point, you've been a guest here, at least the first couple of times that you've been here, but at this point you're like family. Like you've made your way here into this Washington County family. How does it feel to be, back, working on a project here in Hagerstown, here in Washington County with American Idiot?
Oh, it feels like it's been a long time coming. I have been chomping at the bit for years. Even during the peak of the pandemic, I was just trying to find ways to come back, and now we found a way to come back, and it feels like home. It feels like it's just one of the many other times that I'm going to be doing this over and over again. This is the kind of theater that I loved. It's the kind of theater that I've envisioned doing when I wanted to get involved in theater. Yes, Broadway's fantastic. Yes, films are fantastic. All of that, but there's something about community theater that you cannot capture on a Broadway stage. Yeah. Because it's done for the pure love of the craft and the love of the community, and ever since I met you guys, and when I met Robbie, we became fast friends. As the story goes, we became instant buddies, instant brothers when we went to Red Robin over burgers and beer. Burger and beer, and then that was all she wrote. And I always thought to myself, I was like, I'm going to come back here. I don't know how and I don't know what. And Robbie's always made sure that there were options for me to actually play with y'all, and so here I am.
Yeah, I was going to say, Robbie, why Wilson? Why have him back for a project like American Idiot?
Yeah. A couple of reasons. I think that the first reason, whenever he came the first time we were doing Rent to do a class, the guy that helps book classes for Wilson was actually trying to sell me Adam Pascal. And I was like, I don't know. Like Adam's great and all, but who else? And he was like, well, I have Wilson. I was like, you have Wilson on your roster and you're just not telling anybody. Like, what does that make sense? So whenever he came down, like you said, it just felt like a perfect fit. From the first time we picked him up at the airport to the conversation from Reagan back to Hagerstown and just getting to know each other, going through the class and seeing what he did, not only for our performance of Rent, which you were a part of it and was incredible.
You were incredible.
Thank you. You were awesome. But he also did just a regular master class for people, and I saw people that took that class that, for whatever reason, just couldn't get over that hump when it came to the performance. And minutes of working with Wilson, it was completely changed. Their performance was taken to the next level. And so we again, like Will said, we became friends. And it seems like every year when we come up with our season, it was just, all right, Wilson, this is what we got. What do you want? What are you looking for? What are you interested in? And, we went through, I went up and met him in New York and actually saw him perform for the first time live when he was doing a show called Original Sound at the Cherry Lane Theater. And he got booked. I read about it and I called him and I was like, congratulations, I'm coming to see you. Yeah. Because I'd never had the opportunity to see him work live. So I offered him a role in West Side Story and then saw him perform live. And I was just like, okay, there's something different about Wilson that I've seen tons of people perform. I mean, you name them, I've probably seen them, from Alex Brightman to anybody. There's just something about Wilson that's different. One, easy to work with, willing to take direction even though he has the accolades that he has. Easy to work with, and people just love being in an area with him. And so, like I promised him years ago, anytime we have an opportunity, we're going to bring him back.
Yeah, it's like WWWD. What will Wilson do?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Anything that Robbie tells me.
We tried to work some things like through the pandemic as things started lifted, and timing was just always kind of rough, and of course the pandemic was still happening, and so we couldn't. It just never worked out, or he was on another project when we had something. And whenever we were doing American Idiot, which a lot of people say is very similar to Rent, it just made sense. Just made sense to bring back one of the originals, to bring the rock opera to stage in Rent. Why not this as well, being the area premiere and everything else? And he's perfect for the part. When I read it, I listened to it, and Wilson's voice just kept running through my head, and knowing what he could do for this such deep character that he's playing, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
anytime I can.
Absolutely. And Wilson, just like you mentioned, it's a great transition point. The parallels kind of between Rent and American Idiot. Obviously, they're both rock operas, but they both are such raw, important stories. They all have different pieces that even in today's world, even though, again, this is, loosely based off of the early 2000s. Rent is that, kind of late 80s, early 90s kind of era. How have you kind of played around with those parallels of like, hey, this is what I learned from portraying this role in Rent, towards now, this is what I'm playing in American Idiot, with such a raw and kind of pivotal storyline?
Well, the funny thing is that when I first did Rent, it was my first musical, my first rock opera, so it was my education in musicals. I was mainly a club kid that had training in theater and in dance, and I just managed to put it all together, and so I learned. So I took all the education, everything that I got from that, and then it put me on the road, on the track of musicals after that, and I feel that I'm a better musical theater performer, and I understand the craft, but also am able to take the rawness of the material, be rock that is that, and still translate it into a theatrical kind of medium as well. Still cater to the audience instead of it being self-indulgent, because being also a club kid, and when you dance in a club, that's all for you, and the faces that you do is all. But for theater, it's done to convey a message to the audience, and if anything, it's allowed me to be more free, but just more aware of all the intricacies of what message or what's being said within the show, what to hit, what to pull out from, what to kind of throw away, so I mean, I'm very, very, very well aware of it being in the show that it feels like the energy of Rent, the energy, the rawness, especially at the end. At the end, there's in Rent, there's a famous like no day but to dun 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 dun, and in American Idiot there's forgetting you but not the time. But there's that and in the darkest night, there's that great huge ending that just, even if you didn't hear and didn't see the whole show, if you just heard that song and if you just heard the last song for Rent, you'd go like, something just happened there. Something just happened there, and you feel moved. So giving into it. So if anything, long story short, really is to be able to not be so self-indulgent, which is music just makes you want to like, and get into it, but we're like, no. You have to still open up while all this is going on. This is also, it's for everyone. It isn't just for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, American Idiot is so special too because it has, just like you mentioned, so many show-stopping numbers. Obviously, it's the work of Green Day. It's that incredible album that really kind of shaped that generation of, punk rock music and rock music as a whole. Tell us a little bit about the story of American Idiot for those who may know about the album, but they don't know about the story of the musical.
Okay. So the story of American Idiot, it's really, really simple without getting too complex and giving away too many things. It's about these three guys who live in suburbia, and they all have this idea, this romanticized idea about what the outside world and they're at that pivotal age that they're in their in their 20s, kind of living with their parents, maybe had some college. Bouncing around, little sort of no end, or rather end jobs. What's the word that I'm looking for? Like dead end jobs, and also they're punks. They're like low. It almost in my head it kind of reminds me of SLC Punks. If anyone knows this film, it's Salt Lake City Punks. But these guys that live in suburbia. So it's right around 2001 during 9/11, and they have this sense of very much also like Generation X, this sense of disillusionment, of being lied to by the world and the government at large, and so they want to go out and take the world by the balls and say like, all right, I'm going to go and own the world, but with absolutely no plan whatsoever. Yeah. So they go out into the world. My character Johnny goes out and makes it into the city with his buddy Tunny. Will gets his girl pregnant, so he ends up staying back. And so his track is Will's track is that he feels like he's missing out. Meanwhile, the world around him is moving and he's experiencing, or rather, their life is going around him, and he's just completely ignoring it. Tunny, after 9/11, feels that his calling, he has to go into the military, and so that's his worldview, and has changed. And Johnny wants to be basic, and the way that I've done my analysis is that I believe that his idol and the person that he wants to emulate the most is Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols. Uh-huh. That's what this sense of meaningless destruction, meaningless self-destruction, and he needs to go into this rock kind of punk kind of world that he wants to take the city by storm, and he wants to get into the nitty-gritty of all that. And so their three stories, we're watching their three stories evolve over the period of an hour and 15 minutes. And I mean, it's fast and furious, but it's very, and the way Robbie has directed it, from what I understand, the previous productions have been where it's very presentational, very jukebox, where everyone's lights on and they perform here, lights on, they perform here. Here it's a complete narrative, and Robbie manages to weave it into a complete story so the audience will understand. So you get to see their stories and what's going on, and eventually Johnny falls into, very much like Sid Vicious, falls into drug addiction, like heavy drug addiction, finds the love of his life. Will is continuously just feeling like the world is passing him by, even though that there's a world right in front of him, and Tunny is completely disillusioned by what life is in the military, and eventually loses. Can we say what happens to him, to Tunny?
Yeah,
he loses his leg, and. So disillusionment, and so you discover that the disillusionment really is with themselves, and that they discover that they are the ones really responsible for making the world what it is, and hence American Idiot. It's like they have to go completely full circle, and eventually, the beauty about Johnny's character, unlike anyone in the musical Rent, is that Johnny manages to survive that. He survives his foray into heavy drug addiction, and pulls out of it, and manages to come home transformed, hopefully, because it ends with a ... Ends up transformed, but meets with his friends, and all of a sudden everyone's kind of like, you know what? In so many words, it ends up with there's no place like home, but we are the ones that make home, and we are the home as well. It's us, and so that's in a huge nutshell what American Idiot.
That's perfect. I always love asking that question when it comes to like, a show or a musical or even a play is like, all right, give me the cliff notes for the people that don't know. And it's always awesome to hear from, whoever's playing those principal roles in the show, what their kind of concept of the show is. Because like you said, like, a lot of character analysis goes into, building up this character of Johnny or really any character that you're working on. Yeah. And so getting the synopsis from somebody that's in that position is always really awesome to kind of hear. Now, Robbie, obviously, American Idiot is a show it's been around for, a little while. It's been on Broadway. It's made a couple of tours, nationally, internationally. Why now for Hagerstown?
Well, one, it's a 20-year anniversary of American Idiot's album, so
nice.
that was a huge part of it, right? But I think very much like when we did Rent, it's a story that needs to be told. Mm-hmm. Because as Wilson was saying, the characters, the three main characters are all dealing with something that so many people we know and love deal with, whether that be addiction, mm-hmm. depression, anxiety, not sure what your worth is or where you want to go in life, and how the choices that we make essentially not only affect ourselves but those around us. And American Idiot does a great job with that if you do it right. Again, the show got a little bit of a bad rep because, again, most people put the song as like, oh, it's Green Day music, cool, just do it, right? which again, I know there's going to be people that come see the show and they're coming to see it because they love Green Day, mm-hmm. right? And that's cool.
Yeah,
they're going to have a great time and they're going to enjoy the music. But from a theatrical perspective and from a storytelling perspective, it's really important to tell these individual yet woven stories. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's going to hit home for a lot of folks in Hagerstown. As you know, of course, Hagerstown's had a drug problem for a long time. Mm-hmm. People that deal with depression, we see them on the streets all the time. And this is just a different way to look at it from a perspective of what choices you make and how it could feasibly affect your life. And again, like Wilson said, luckily they all come out of it. And that's great. It's that happy ever after, which is wonderful. But this show is so powerful, and truthfully, I wanted to take on the challenge. Mm-hmm. I wanted to take a show that, if you read all the reviews, not just the ones that are on Music Theater International's website, says how amazing it is, but a lot of people turned away from it because they were like, I don't know what I left. Mm-hmm. I just watched something and I have no clue. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's a challenge. that's like, okay, so how do I take this and make sure everybody leaves mm-hmm. and feels something?
Yeah.
And it's an hour and 10 minutes long. It's not a long show. There's mm-hmm. no intermission. You're going to sit down, and for an hour, we're going to take you on a roller coaster ride of emotions. Ooh. From the highest high to some of the lowest lows. And Wilson, among the rest of our cast of local talent, are absolutely killing it. We had a rehearsal last night where we just focused on just script, like scene study, and really diving in. And I direct a little bit different. I sent them, with their scene partners. I said, y'all go work on this because it needs to be natural. I can tell you where to move, how to move on every word you say, mm-hmm. and it'll be fine. But it's going to bring a certain amount of realness to it, to where everything just feels natural for you. You're not doing something because you're being told to by a director, but instead you're finding what feels right with your castmate. It's real, it's raw, it's emotional, it's in your face, it's fun, and it's time to hopefully give it a different reputation. Yeah. And again, it's never been done in Hagerstown. It hasn't been done in the area. I think mostly because people are afraid of it.
Yeah.
But we love those that act. It's our favorite thing. It's our favorite thing. Take those shows people are afraid.
Challenge accepted should be the new slogan. Yeah.
Well, like Rent, wasn't done in this area at all. We did it, and it's everywhere now. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten a couple calls to come out and direct it at other places. I'm like, no, there's no way we're going to repeat what we had. And
we had a special moment there.
It's I'm done with it unless we do it again. Yeah. But But for this one, again, it's kind of the same thing. I want the challenge. I want to turn this show into something people leave and go, wow.
Yeah, it's so funny as you were explaining that as being like this like hour and 15-minute roller coaster ride. I kept thinking in my head of like Rock and Roller Coaster in Disney World, but instead of Aerosmith, it's Green Day.
Yeah.
And instead of all of the graphics, it's just all of these just hard-hitting raw like stories. But it's so true. Like I've seen it before in other places on Broadway and on a touring production, and it's like it's just from start to finish. You are just like, holy cow, okay, well, and all of this.
It doesn't stop.
So that cohesiveness is so important. And Wilson, I'm curious too. I know Robbie was mentioning about how like, there's so much work that goes into like the scene studies and working on things with your partners. I know, I did that production in Next Normal a couple of months ago where, kind of the first process was literally just reading through the text and being like, the director would just ask like wild, questions, but it was very, hard-hitting, raw kind of conversations about the character, about what was going on at that specific time, just so that it's not a situation where it's like you go out there and you're reading the script and that's basically it. So I'm curious, how much, work really goes into, really perfecting these roles like Johnny, like Angel that you obviously originated there on Broadway, really putting together all of those scene studies, the character studies, and really kind of analyzing, okay, this is how I believe the character is telling the story, so this is how I'm going to kind of, portray that role.
No, it's a daily analysis. I mean, there's something that you do where you assume what your character is within the context of the story, within what you read within the context of the script, and then there's who you are within the context of the show that you're in, with the other actors that are also all of a sudden alive and rather than just working on your lines or working on what you thought, then there's what those actors and their perspective on their characters are hitting you with, and then there's the perspective of the director guiding you in that way. So there's always a shifting constant.
Yeah.
It's like it's not like NASCAR, which is just left turns. This is like Formula One,
Right. It's like, and we go this way.
where the adjustments are where it's that much, because everything that we were working on yesterday, they were slight adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't huge. You're like, well, I want you now on the other side of the stage, and I want you to do this. It was more like okay, this is what I want you to be thinking at that point, and just allowing that makes you go this and makes the car go completely that way,
Yeah.
or makes your track rather go completely in that particular direction. Perfect example is the question, and because I believe that there's no question that's too stupid to ask when you're show, because might as well.
You haven't done community theater long enough.
So you ask him, right? So I go. There's a line in the show where he goes like, where I say, "Ain't it neat? God said He would skin me alive." God, meaning the character, is my father, father, stepfather. And for a while we've been running it, and I do the line was like, ain't it neat? God said He would skin me alive, right? And I'm thinking in my head, and this is what it means. What I mean by I already had something in my head about what that line meant and what I was doing, and I thought that it was like he had like maybe a tattoo.
Yeah.
On his arm or on his neck, and that I would point to my friends and go, ha, check it out. God said He was skin me alive for getting this tattoo. And then they go like, oh, it is your stepdad, Brad, right? And so I was like, you know what? Because we never addressed it, we just kind of like go through it and just throw it. And I was like, and for some reason I was feeling like I'm throwing, like I know I'm focusing on this line, but I really don't know what's going on, and I want it to be clear in my face. So I asked him. So he was like, "So, what do you think it is?" And I was like, "Is it this? Is it?" And Robbie was like, "No, I think it's like." And then we go through. I think we discuss it for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We discuss that one line for 10 minutes, and then it becomes clear to me where it isn't this. Because I mean, I was going to try to take the cheap way out, which was like, yes, have it be that.
Yeah.
Have it be some. So that way I won't have to like internalize it that much. And he's like, "No. You're actually saying that ain't it neat that rather than it being a period, because I'm also being very much of an actor where I'm reading the actual sentence and it says ain't it neat, period. God said He, it's actually really ain't it neat, comma, God said he would skin me alive, as in just in general, it's a general comment of my relationship with my stepfather.
Yeah.
Like ain't it cool that he wants to skin me, and that he said that he would skin me?
Yeah.
Isn't it really funny? And all of a sudden that was, clear to me. And so that is part of, the I would say the living analysis, because it just doesn't live on it's a living word. It actually just keeps on moving and shifting, and the ideas of what you think, and playing it with Cece, I can have an idea of like what I think it is, or what I think our relationship is, and then all of a sudden like we work with each other, and then it shifts as well.
Yeah.
So I like to be like flowy. I get my initial ideas. I mean, and I'll just give you like a real general like character analysis of what I think my Johnny is obviously everything that I described before of him wanting to get out of the suburbs. But he's a poser. Yeah, he's a poser with a lot of bravado that wants to be, and a poser as in like a British punk poser. Like he envisions like the punk scene, like the Sex Pistols are God.
Yeah.
Now, completely ignoring the fact that punk actually started in New York City. But punk, he wants to be that. That is who he is, but he has absolutely no plans. He's and I would think like he's a decent musician, but again, no band. Maybe he has written like maybe 2-3 incomplete songs that it's never fitted with, like, and then I'm thinking that the rest should be like right, like a guy that has a lot of incompletes in his life, and that's kind of like who he is. And then the misadventures that he gets into, that's what starts filling in the gaps for him. And maybe I foresee like if you envision like what his life is after this whole show, after the last line where he says like this is my life, that he writes his first complete. So actually no, well, he does write one song, one complete song to What's Her Name.
Mm-hmm. That's the name of the character, by the way. He's not forgetting it.
He writes one song, and maybe that is the only song that he's written completely ever.
Yeah.
Ever. And so I envision him afterwards like either becoming the musician, because he's actually had life experiences, he's actually wiser, and he knows what loss is, sacrifice is, and the consequences of doing things. And it's, again, the hard I have to say again, he's a character which you normally don't get to see in stories, that survives heroin addiction. I mean, heroin is not designed for you to actually get off of it.
Yeah.
And he survives it. He gets to his crossroads is once he loses his girl, loses What's Her Name, she leaves him and says like, I am tired of I'm not going to be here for your evolution or destruction. I'm just not going to be here anymore. The process, that the crossroads is like, what do I do? Either I can actually go headlong into this addiction and just say, screw it all. I've lost everything anyway. There's nothing to go back to anyway. Or I can get my act together. And he chooses, and I know it sounds very cliche, he chooses life. Mm-hmm. He chooses life. And he realizes there is a life back home. There is a life back home. He attempts to do the straight life and work in an office and throw on a shirt and tie and the whole thing. And you realize that, no, this is not me, mm-hmm. but there is still something back home. And then, there's something to be said about friendship. And there's a song, Coming Home Again, where he gets together with his friends again, and there is that love that's there, and so that's my character analysis, the base of it, and then the evolution based within the context of the story, the direction, the actors, and everything. Just like how I always said, I think you asked me that once before about when I was playing Angel. For me, and I've always said, my Angel is different with every single Collins that I play. It's different, and for me, it's actually every role that I do, anything that I do, it's always it exists in one way in my head, and then all of a sudden it becomes something else when it's exposed to oxygen.
Yeah.
I think the other tough part about, getting into a character with a show like this is typically a show is written, you have a story, and then you add music to it, right? This is the complete opposite. This album came out, and then they were like, how do we turn these songs that already have lyrics and music into a show? So sometimes it doesn't always fit just by the lyrics, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes there's little things missing. So encouraging my cast to really read these lyrics and figure out how they apply, because it's a lot closer than you actually think it is. And Billy Joe and his team that put this show together, it really does work. And again, the smallest piece, maybe not the whole song makes sense for this, but there are pieces within this song that are speaking directly to your character. So instead of just singing your lyrics, read them.
Yeah.
Read them and take the time to be like, what does this line in the song actually mean? I was talking to one of the other actresses, the girl was playing, what's her name, Cece Saunders, who's a regional Emmy winner and has been involved with that for several years and has been around. We were talking about the song Letter Bomb yesterday, and we were kind of working through it, and once I opened the book, I was like, let's actually read through these lyrics, because I think once we read through them, we kind of talk through what's happening, not to the song, but then we apply what happened within the show somewhere, it's going to be a lot easier to connect the dots, which is tough to do sometimes, because usually the song's written for that specific moment.
Right.
It's not the case with this show.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit more difficult. So just continuing to remind my cast, we're not there yet. We still have, we have until the 22nd, 23rd to put this on stage, which means you have all this time to continue to grow your character and go a little deeper and a little deeper until you can fully embody it and feel comfortable with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Which, again, can be really difficult when you're like, why am I singing this? This song is
right.
Why these lyrics? Well, it's because it's Green Day's lyrics, and we have to figure out how they fit.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes having to take a little creative liberty and be like, and kind of draw more of a backstory than for your character than what's actually written, which I encourage all actors to do all the time. Figure out where they were before and after. And again, the script might not tell you that, but that's the fun part. You're creating a character. Don't turn on the TV or YouTube or go see a show and be like, I'm going to do everything that guy did or that girl did. Because they might be missing something that you might be able to find and connect with personally. And our cast has done an incredible job. Really breaking all of that down and spending the time and the conversations that I've gotten to have with a lot of the cast, which I see them all the time, but it's nice whenever I go home for the night and I get a message from one of my cast members and they're like, hey, I was reading this and I think this and this, what do you think? And then we end up turning into a 2-hour conversation through text messenger with your social media or whatever, just discussing it and then seeing what they do with it the next day.
Right.
So for tomorrow's rehearsal, after doing all that scene work, I'm more excited to see once we put the rest of the cast together and the band together and everything else and see where those couple hours that we took yesterday just to focus on some really key scenes, where that's going to take the entire performance. Because what they did yesterday just by themselves and me, with the 6 or 7 scenes we were really focused on, was incredible. Now, when we add the ensemble into it, the band into it, everything else,
every piece,
it's really good. I'm so excited for tomorrow's rehearsal, last rehearsal before Tech Week, and it's really just about to explode.
Oh yeah,
I can't wait.
Yeah, and like you said too, with the characterization, and then exactly what you were saying with kind of studying all of the pieces of the dialogue and the lyrics. This is probably the easiest show to go 50% on, meaning because it's a jukebox musical, because it's Green Day songs, if you're into the music, you could easily just act like, you're teenage angst pop punk kid and run up on stage, do you only renovate? And that's it. And some people might be like, wow, this is great. But if they're not, again, telling that story, then it is going to feel like an hour and 15 minutes of a bunch of people running around angry singing Green Day songs.
I told the cast last night, I was like, there's going to be, I've told them before, there are going to be people who just come for this thing because of the music, and they're not going to get it. No matter what we do and no matter how hard we push the story, they're coming so they can hear Boulevard and Holiday and Know Your Enemy and the list goes on.
21 Guns, yeah.
All of them, right? And that's fine. Kind of a good time. But they're going to be theater people there who are going to be looking for that story behind the music. And again, you listen to the album and you're probably thinking, how's this album going to tell any kind of good story? Just come.
Right.
Just come. It's going to make you, again, you're going to feel every emotion in 1 hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's wild.
I think that the lyrics, though, I mean, are not vague, and I mean, I know they're poetic. I guess it speaks to me because I'm a rockhead, and I mean that before anything else. I like to call it specific abstraction. It's abstract, but it's really specific because the feeling is there. It was like, oh, okay, I know what's happening.
Yeah.
And so it's up to you to then convey that feeling.
And sometimes so specific that it makes it more complicated.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you miss one piece of your character and your character analysis, and this one line or these couple of lines in the show, if you miss that piece, you're not going to be able to connect it. So doing the study, yes, believe it or not, actors don't just memorize a bunch of words and just spew them out. Like there's a lot of work that goes into it to put on a good performance, well, a great performance.
Yes.
And this cast has been putting in the work from Wilson all the way through the entire ensemble. The band is epic. They are so good. You're gonna think you're listening to Green Day.
Yeah,
like, they are incredible.
Yeah, and Wilson, this is your first experience working in what was a TV studio and has now turned into a massive rehearsal space.
Yes.
I gotta know, how has that experience been like? I love seeing some of the footage where it's like, you guys are staging everything, and the giant green screen that once was the house that Lou Scally built is right behind Wilson just rocking out doing his thing. Obviously you've been in plenty of different spaces, whether it's performance spaces or rehearsal spaces. What has it been like kind of being in the new ACT space there at Washington Street?
Oh, I love it. I don't have many words for that, but I love the space, and I was amazed at not just that room, but all the facilities and all the equipment, and you did a fantastic job doing it, Rob.
It was more so Brittany than me, but finding the building, I mean, it was a lot. That building was it's old, it was decrepit, and now it's not. But it's funny because I found so many old artifacts from NBC 25, WHAG, WD, like old 8-track boxes of like their voiceover stuff, like boxes and boxes and boxes. And I've been in that building since I was a kid. Randy Mitchell, Round Mountain of Sound.
Round Mountain of Sound, yeah.
We got to actually do the last interview in his old studio, right, back a few years ago. But I went up into the catwalk where he used to take me to watch the news being done live whenever I would go in and do voiceovers with him. And there was a Rolodex that was flipped to his name.
That's wild.
Just sitting there on the floor. And I picked up, I was like,
what?
That's my uncle. Yeah. That's his old address. That's his phone. Like it was crazy, but it's completely transformed. We have our first open house. Really opening up to the public, and on Saturday of the 16th, and it's a whole different place, and it's been fun to see people who have worked there previously, like Melissa Fountain.
Right, she's like, we gotta get a tour.
Mike Nolan used to work there, and he works with us a little bit now too. And them seeing it and going, whoa, like, wow, this is different.
Yeah.
In a good way. But it's, we went from, 7,200 square feet to 14,000, and
a major upgrade right there.
Yeah. Everything we could ever need.
Yeah.
We have the space for it now. I'm not going wood. I say that until I keep on coming up with ideas, and I'm like, 14,000 square feet's not enough.
Let's try 28.
Let's do it. Let's see what happens. Who knows?
That's amazing. And I mean, obviously, like, you know, we need to get a video of Wilson doing the weather forecast on that green wall. Like, that was the only thing I could possibly think of when I was looking at those videos. I was like, first of all, this is awesome. But then you're like, okay. I was like, he's behind that green. He's like right in front of that green screen. I'm so tempted to want to put something behind him.
we were going to paint it.
Yeah.
I was like, why? I was like, now we just have an all-time green screen. We can do whatever we want with it.
And it's a museum piece at this point too. It's like,
but it's one of those where again, act is more than a theater company now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it started as that at Children's Theater. We grew it to a full-blown theater to now being more of an entertainment company where we do all different kinds of things. We're teaching our teenagers in our teen program right now about content creation, podcasting, different ways. And again, the goal being that hopefully some of these kids that do want to do this for a living, they realize that you can't always be on stage. Mm-hmm. So having a good foundation of, hey, now you know how to do costumes, you know how to build sets, you know how to work on lights, you know how to work on sound, all these things, you can still work and put food on the table.
Yeah.
And that's super important to me because that's how theater should be taught.
Yeah.
It should. It's not all about hitting the stage because eventually someone's going to say no to you and then you're hungry.
You got to know plan B there. Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
And why not have a plan B that keeps you right in the theater?
Right. I love it. Wilson, my last question for you, and this is kind of the nice bookend to what we talked about early on. You know, what things have you taken from your years of experience in theater now in the joys of fatherhood? What things have you kind of taken from your theatrical experiences, the shows in the past that you've done, some of the work that you've done over the years, now in dad mode?
She knows Angel.
There you go. That's true. Yeah.
I've learned to go with the flow, expect the unexpected, not to be rigid, and allow things to be what it is, and not just be reactionary, but to flow with it, and that's, I mean, it's oh my God, every single day though. I mean, this little girl this manages to blow my mind, and actually I heard it in my head. I have this like thing where when I try to remind myself to be in the moment, I just have a gong and we're like gong. She reminds me to be in the moment. She reminds me all the time to be in the moment. She's a little girl that will. Like the other day, like last week, she's just started to walk. She stumbled, hit her face against the arch of the kitchen where we're staying at, and left a little bruise on her face. Was crying, really hard for 10 minutes, and then after that, all was right in the world. After that, and that is a perfect example of being the moment. It was like, okay, that moment's over. Now there's this moment.
Yeah.
Now there's that moment.
Sit there and watch Bluey.
She reminds me as an actor even more so. Just as to be in the moment. To accept that as what it is, as opposed to trying to control that and let that guide you. So she's teaching me as much as I can ever hope to teach her right now, for now.
I love it. Amazing. Wilson, Robbie, thank you so much for stopping by the old home studio here. It's a ton of fun. I was going to say, y'all have the sauna behind you the entire time. I'm like, man, we should have just done this in the sauna. It would have been miserable after a while.
Can I be a guest on Ryan's sauna?
There we go. Exactly. Yeah. We'll have to do little duo moments there. But yeah, American Idiot. March 23rd and 24th, the Maryland Theaters. 22nd and 23rd, don't look at that. Starring Tony Award winner Wilson Jermaine Heredia. Hope to see you guys out there.